Okay, we're live.
Okay. So, welcome to the Express Triage meetings, first or second of its kind. I should apologize to the team for a little bit mess up with the timings because it was really all of a sudden. A couple of reasons. The we could not get into a common consensus that works for everybody, and secondly, most of us are unavailable in the next week going to the node.js interactive and then a common holidays and things like that. So we thought getting together and quickly discussing some of these items before going off for 1 month would be something useful, and that's when this one happened. Having said that, next time onwards, definitely we should make it either a recurring meeting with well scheduled in advance and well-defined agenda, or at least we should have a meeting planned 1 week in advance.
Yeah, I'll add my 2 cents on that front. Like I think like a scheduled meeting would be good, because one of the things, like in addition to the specific triage issues, I think like as on the package maintenance front, we want to pull out like and touch on what's working, what's not working, and sort of what we can do in terms of the pattern that we're hopefully going to develop as a good way to get engaged. So at least at some interval, talking about that would be good.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. One of the challenge I see with the recurring meeting is, one is to get a proper slot in the calendar. I think that's a challenge. And second one, getting a time that works for everybody. I think we will discuss that when the specific agenda item reaches there.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so I definitely agree that having some time set aside for this is good. I would like to suggest we figure out if we can make the TC meeting for Express and this line up a little bit. I think if we can, the only reason that meeting is scheduled for what it is because it worked for the people who were at that time attending and voted on the thing. I think we'd be happy to move it if there was a better time, and then have, maybe a section of it for the TC and a section of it for the triagers. I just think that would foster a little bit more cross communication, and it really is a team effort, and to have two separate things feels a little bit like maybe people will be like, oh, but we're doing all this work, and why is the TC having this separate meeting? And I want to make sure that we're really trying to make it clear that this is a group effort. We're really trying to bring everybody in, and the goal would be that at some point everybody has something to say during the TC meeting, not just whatever the triage section is.
So. Yeah, no, that sounds like a really good idea to me. Like, I think, like you said, it'll probably starts out with the two purposes. One, to figure out the pattern we can use for other projects as well, and that's package maintenance related. But longer term, like the triage stuff, you could just see being like, okay, we figured it out. It's now just part of the Express planning. And so, yeah, that somehow lining those up, it really sounds like a great idea.
So I guess I do think it would be fine if we don't try to do that first, but I just want to make sure that we don't let it go too long with having separate,
I don't know if that could be a goal for the January meeting or the meeting after that, or I don't know what, but like, yeah, I think you're right. We should set a goal specifically for.
Yeah, I think January would probably be fine. I think this particular one, Doug had a couple of things going on that made it so that he wouldn't have been able to make the second, time slot. But I think if we plan now for January, I'm sure that, we can get a time that works for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Jarish, will you take the action to try and figure that out?
But isn't the TC meeting already scheduled and in the calendar?
It is. You know what? Let me take point on that one. I think okay. I'll post an issue talking about these two things and try to lay out maybe a plan, or I'll take care of that part.
Okay.
Because I think it'll be good for yeah. Anyway, I don't need to get too much go into that, but I'll take lead and I'll post an issue and we'll talk through like what other times we want, and then if there's a better structure that, because I think this really the goal here would be we change the structure of the TC meeting a little bit to make it align more with the needs here, which is why I think it'll be a little bit bigger discussion than just picking a time. But that, which is fine. I think it'll be easy for us to get consensus on that. So Doug, if for those of you who weren't able to make our very impromptu meeting, Doug is, I think, really excited for this. I'm really excited for this. I think that we're all on the same page. So I don't see it being hard for us to get a good consensus on what the next steps are.
Yeah. Okay, so looking at the agenda, we look at the general approach and probably discuss what we've been doing and a short summary of that. And then we could also spend some time on discussing who wants to work on which repo, which project area, etc., so that we don't overlap each other or we don't duplicate the effort, etc. And then we also need to figure out a mechanism of coordinating as well as exchanging information about the triage work. I guess we had a bit of a discussion on that in the first meeting between Wes, Doug, and myself about opening a discussion repo kind of thing where we could publicly, share information and things like that. But yeah, we will talk about that. And the other one is about the future meetings. We just talked about how do we synchronize it with the TC meeting. Again, let's touch base on that at the end. And then the last one is about the community corner event, which Wes is leading in the Node.js Interactive next week. These are the items we want to discuss. Anything else anybody wants to bring in the agenda?
The only other thing I might suggest is just a brief introduction, because I'm not sure everybody knows who everybody is and kind of how they think they'll be involved.
Okay.
I agree. I think that would be great.
Yeah, either Michael, you or Wes want to take that up, the introduction part. Basically, I guess it's an objective, goal, and the kind
well, I was thinking just a personal introduction, so like we can ask each person to.
Okay. I can just start, and then we can go.
Yep.
Whoever wants to go next. So I'm Wes, working on the package maintenance working group stuff, but also the reason I got involved with that was because I work on Express. So I'm on the TC there, and I have been sort of the point person in trying to grow the community around it. Doug really leads the project and is often the one involved deeply in all the repos, doing a lot of the technical stuff, but that sometimes leaves him a little bit short on time for doing some of this, community building and trying to get people together. So my goal from this is to help, make sure that the project has a long-term maintenance plan that is, not a bus factor of 1 or 2, I guess, because I'm also participating in there, but my goal here is to really help us grow the project in a way that makes sure that it's sustainable and unlocks, the next great feature set that would really help, keep it as the #1 HTTP framework in the Node ecosystem. So, yep.
Okay, myself, Girish, been involved in Node.js project for the last 6 years. I'm a Node.js collaborator and technical steering committee member. Apart from that, I'm part of the diagnostic working group, actively involved in that. Inside IBM as well as outside, basically in the community, I basically look at diagnosing issues. I manage the Node.js help repo that gets a lot of traffic these days, and I really enjoy debugging and diagnosing issues. So my main motivation in Express Triage work is to see what kind of issues the users are facing in the upper level stack of the Node.js, and make sure that the ecosystem, for me, Express represents the Node.js ecosystem, because that is the immediate wrapper around Node.js. So I'm really happy and enjoying the work I'm doing in Express, and looking forward to expand my skills as well as scope of engagement in that space.
Okay, I'll go then. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so my name's Glenn. I'm probably a user of Express and Node more than anything, more than a contributor. I just want to be as helpful as I can to the community, and that's about it. I'm also a member of the package maintenance team, doing what I can.
Being in meetings like this counts as contributing, so you can count yourself.
Some people only believe code counts.
Well, we're not them.
I'm just looking at the list. Bethany, do you want to go next, or?
Yep, sure. So hi, I'm Beth Griggs. I work at IBM with Michael and Garish. I'm also work in the Node.js project. I'm a member of the release team and the LTS teams underneath the release working group. And also a member of package maintenance. And I'm kind of more interested in the backporting and creating tools to help manage LTS versions and things like that, and whether there's any common interest between how we manage LTS versions in Node and how we backport things in Node compared to the dependent modules in Express. So that's me.
I see next in the list, Harshi. Sorry if I'm getting your name wrong.
I'm Harshita. Hello.
Hello. Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. There was a problem in the internet connection. So I am working in IBM under Girish as an intern. So from past 5 months, I started learning JavaScript and Node.js concepts. So from past 2.5 months, I've been involved in Express issues triaging. I'm loving the work which I'm doing currently. That's it.
Thanks. I see Helio, you're next on the list.
Yep. So hello, everyone. I work for Red Hat, and our team is responsible for productization and internal release of Node.js, and also responsible to make Node.js more aligned with the OpenShift platform, and we do a lot of different things, but not directly related to application development, and the Express triage was initially something discussed internally on our team, but I'm not sure if what we are going to continue with the Express efforts directly via Red Hat. I mean, my time, I can continue by myself since this is community, but since the less movements in the team, I'm not sure if Red Hat can't allocate a time for me to continue. But anyway, being part of this effort via Red Hat or not, because Red Hat is full open source company, you know, the things get mixed at some time. So yeah.
Okay, and I think that leaves just me. I'm Michael Dawson. I'm on the technical steering committee as well. Work with the Jarish and Bethany and actually with some of the Red Hat team a little bit now too. And just as part of the package maintenance effort, looking to see how we define the pattern of engagement and using Express as a first very important package that we want to do that with. So my interest is kind of encouraging forward progress on this, and it's great to see a group like this get together and start to figure out what's going to work.
Yeah. Let me see if I can share my screen. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So basically, the next one, we want to discuss a bit on the approach which we want to take on the triaging front, and then some of the things which we experienced, myself, Harshita, and Helio to some extent, who have been doing this for the last couple of months. We crafted that into a best practice document with Wes' help. So triaging at high level starts with tagging issues, basically in 4 items: need, triage, questions, bug, and enhancements. These names should be pretty trivial to map against, but the only caveat here is that once the new issue comes, definitely it goes into the needs triage section, but based on some reviews and some interactions with the OP, it should fall into one of these other categories, that is question, bug, or enhancement. That would involve some work. Sometimes it would be very obvious in the first attempt itself. Sometimes you will need to do some work or some to and fro before we actually make a judgment about what category it belongs to. It's also possible that over the course of the problem determination work, the tag changes or switches between, say, question to bug and things like that. I guess it's perfectly acceptable.
I
So
wanted to ask here, so there's a few other tags, and I didn't mention it when I just approved this PR like 30 minutes ago, because I had already went through a few rounds, and I think it's good for us to just get, I like what's here and get it merged, but I do think there's a few other tags we actively use in most of the Express repos, and I'm unsure, do we think they're worth adding here? So some of them are awaiting more info, is a very common one, because oftentimes we will, after the first contact, instead of being able to label it as a question, bug, enhancement, etc., we really actually just asked a question and need more info before we can make that determination. I thought that one might be worth mentioning. Question is another one that I think we had on a list previously, but then didn't make it into this. Oh, no, it did. Question is in the PR. Okay, my bad, not question. There was a few others. Let's see. Good first contribution and discuss. Those are the two. It wasn't question, it was discuss. That was the one I was thinking. So do we think it's worth adding those ones?
yeah,
before merge, or?
that if those two are the discrete piece of tags that are missing, I could definitely add that. But if there are more than that, probably we could add that incrementally as well.
Yeah, I think it's fine to have a starting point and add more later too. So
okay.
Anyway, yeah.
So next one is the general approach. So the approach which we took is first looked at the West status board, which is absolutely awesome because that abstract the whole of 95 repos across the 3 organizations: Express.js, Pillar.js, and JS HTTP. So we looked at the number of stars, the number of contributors, and open issues to start with, to make some assumptions about what would be the good pick of the repos. So for example, If there are so many open issues, then probably that is an indication that you need to get engaged in with some assistance over there. If the number of contributors, and of course, the number of contributors and the number of maintainers may not have a one-to-one mapping, but it gives an indication about how many people are actively involved in that repo. So the less the number of maintainers, the more you should be getting onto that repo. So I would say that the chance of you needing to get onto the repo is directly proportional to the number of open issues and inversely proportional to the number of active maintainers. One of the good thing with the Express.
Michael, if do you mind
Yeah,
muting?
sorry, I'll mute.
It gets pretty loud. That's all right.
Yeah. One of the good thing which I liked with the Express project, that each of these repos represent one module, and one module represents one discrete middleware function. So for example, multer or body parser, session, these are the ones which we came across, and these exposes one discrete function, and it's pretty easy to follow. And most of these repos have one single page README document which has the complete information about all the APIs that the module is exposing. So that's a really good thing. And one of the pattern which these most of the repos follow, I believe, it's my extrapolation, is that they start with a constructor. That means if it is a session, for example, you create a session object and then bind it with your Express app and provide all the configurations and tunables that is related to the session at the construction time. The constructor creates a number of private functions. They call it middleware, which will be invoked when the actual request response transaction gets kicked in. So this is a pattern which we have seen in quite many places. Wes, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think it's a good high level. There will be some exceptions, obviously. I think you're talking about the middleware modules. You will also find, and so actually this is maybe a good point to make. There's 3 organizations. The way the modules are structured under those organizations was intentional, and it's about what place in the application they have. So the highest level is like the middleware and Express itself. Those are in the Express.js org. The next level below that is sort of the framework components. So that's things like the router. And I think that's maybe the most visible one. That is in Pillar.js. And then below that is JS HTTP, which is all of the low-level HTTP modules. So this would be things like methods, status codes, content type negotiation, e-tag generation, like all these things that it takes to make up an HTTP framework that are just totally generic. So the description Girish provided for these is really for the top level stuff, the middleware, so session, body parser, multer, etc. As you go down the module list, you'll see though that there's these 2 other orgs. Those may follow a different pattern. That's fine. Actually, I think body parser is in Pillar.js? I think it's funny. I don't always body parser.
It's
no, it's an Express. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Well, anyway, yeah, so a lot of the middleware is at the top level, but you'll look at the other ones and you'll just see that, as you go into the JS HTTP and Pillar, they may follow different patterns. So.
Okay, yeah, but yeah, the modules which we encountered so far, that was a good thing. It follows the same pattern, so it was good to move from one to another with a understanding about the previous one. So. The other thing is, I believe most of the modules have the sufficient debug statements sprinkled across the most critical control flow. That essentially means you could export the debug and then get a high level understanding about what are the key control flow that is happening in the application in case of something goes bad. For example, session. One of the key pattern which we observed in the session module is session is not persisted when the request is redirected to another route. So many issues, many people raise the same issue. The root cause could be different. Root cause may not be a bug as such, but this is a pattern which we observed, and it's pretty easy to diagnose this if you switch on the debug. Similarly, in multi-module, we saw one specific pattern of the error message or anything that happens in the file upload by the multi-module. If something goes for a toss, the error is not propagated to the final user callback. For various reasons, historical reasons, the callback is not designed to receive an error type. And because of that, there is absolutely no way for one middleware to give back the error code into that. So at the end of it, the error is being absorbed. There is a workaround for that. You can explicitly make a request to the middleware whose callback is actually receiving an error message. But then these are kind of not well understood in the field. So we get a lot of issues on that range as well. Again, this is very easily diagnosed if you just switch on the debug. And the other point I want to mention is, writing reusable code has been really, really great. We did it a couple of times. The whole idea is look at the pattern. For example, in this session, not persisting across redirections, we just wrote a client server code which make use of a session and then having two routes and demonstrated how the session is persisting between the redirections and then posted it in a gist, then cross-referenced it in all the issues that reported this particular problem. Now, the good thing with that is future issues on the same lines also can be just just referenced with this single gist. Thereby, we save a lot of time. It could be one-time effort for writing full-fledged programs, but later it's a good idea. And
yeah, I will say, oh, well, let me just on that note, if the team only wrote reproduction cases, it would be immensely valuable. Obviously, there's tons of other things we can be doing, but one of the most common things for those awaiting more information tags is that the person just didn't provide us enough of a reproducible case to understand what they're doing. So doing that alone would be very valuable to us. So definitely keep that top on the list of things to do.
Yeah. So in many cases, what happens is the OP description gives you some understanding about the problem, but because of the fact that they don't provide completely running code, you don't know what is actually happening under the cover. They may not be able to explain the problem properly. They may be making some mistakes in their program, but because they don't know what mistake they are making, they will not expose that particular aspect or they won't explain it. Now, if a completely running program is published, they can actually compare that program with what they are doing and probably easily make the corrections in a point where they may be making a mistake. So we have seen that immensely helpful if we come up with a completely runnable program, not necessarily.
So not to interrupt. Am I good? One other thing that might be really valuable if this becomes a common thing for us to do is to create a list somewhere where we can start collecting those examples, because a lot of times, I think you're pointing out, people will reopen the same issue and, sometimes it's even across multiple repos because it kind of touches on a few different things. If there was some sort of, list or cookbook kind of thing that we could easily reference, especially, and GIFs I think are a perfect format for that. Especially if we can, the end goal, which would be amazing, I think we're a little far from this though, would be look for keywords in their issue report, have tags on the GIF somehow that then automatically will respond and say, hey, it looks like you're having issues with, X issue. Here is some GIFs that show some different behaviors that might help you, and they've helped users in the past debug their program, or something like that. But I think if we start this path of creating those kind of simple reproduction test case examples, we could start integrating those in more places, and that might actually help automate some of this stuff in the future.
Yep, makes sense. The last point I want to mention in the best practice or approach is know your maintainers. Basically, when you embark on a particular repo, you should know who are the active maintainers on that repo, or at least you should be able to differentiate the users of the repo versus the maintainers, because that's important for a couple of reasons. One, not to confuse the issues raised by maintainers themselves to be coming from an end user, and it can cause confusion. I think in our case, at least once it happened. Secondly, in case of where you are not able to either make a judgment, or you provided some update but you are not 100% sure about the actual root cause, or your confidence level is a little bit low, so it's always good to copy a maintainer. I guess there is no harm in doing that. Wes?
Yeah, I think we're watching most of the repos, so by all means mention us. It won't be disruptive. We probably already read the comments, so it's not going to be any extra burden. Obviously, as this expands, hopefully there's more activity, and so it will be harder and harder to follow everything. But I definitely think when your best judgment is like, maybe somebody else should take a look at this, mentioning the maintainer is perfectly acceptable and good practice. So
yeah. Any questions on this particular topic?
I think what might be helpful is if we actually discuss the topics with respect to what's going to be said at the community corner, as Wes just said, like, I was going to go away and write some words for that, but I think if we actually discuss that with respect to what's just been discussed, so when we talk about package maintenance and we say, oh, we're addressing licensing, versioning, support, but this is a real tangible thing, and these are the things we need to be done on there, because I was starting to write that today, but I wanted to obviously do this call and have discussions with people before we did it. But really, as you said, reproduction seems to be reproducing error cases seems to be like one of the top asks. Can you get a repo up which reproduces this issue? Just a simple one, so that the maintainer doesn't have to do that 3 days work to make it happen.
So are you thinking that we can? So there was a few topics there. I just want to make sure I understand what you're asking. So we have the stuff we're going to be planning for the community corner, but I think also that's just the sort of here and now that will be during that event. I think there's also the other part of it, which is having a concrete list of actually actionable things that people can start working on. Am I right to separate that into sort of two topics?
Yes, I think you are.
Okay. So my hope is that the the point of the status board was to be the place where we send people for those actionable things. So my goal would be that you can look at sort of maybe, and if I'm looking at it now, it might not serve all that purpose. I think we need to make some improvements, but you know, maybe we can have a page that includes some of the information that Gresh has recently written about how to be a triager, and then actually on that page also list some of the issues that they should get started looking at. Because if you look here, help wanted, the issues, the tags listed in the PR here, discuss, help wanted, we'll need to add the needs triage one, but the idea we could have a list that's, you know, up to date and active, that people can, as they read this, just jump straight into getting involved. Does that sound like it solves that part of the case? Okay, cool. So
I was
so
going
yeah,
to say, I just wanted to add, I think that's good. I think like it's probably worth today just having to this group to have a look at that status board and say, well, where do we think the biggest, like, you know, Jarish should look at it in the past and said, well, Multer is the one that looks like it needs the most help. Having that discussion that says, we've looked through and like, here's the next two that look like they need the most help, would be good. And then, you know, because people could say, watch this recording, or, you know, I
Sure.
come from the perspective that sometimes it's great to do it off, you know, through GitHub, but sometimes the personal touch of like, hey, we've talked about this and we've, you know, this is the one we think is a great place to jump in, will help people feel more comfortable to do that.
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about this on the previous call, and I think you know, Doug and my sentiments were very in line. The ones that the team had already identified were great ones to get started in. I think the actual Express repo is probably the next one. That one probably gets the largest single volume of support requests, and maybe not just support requests, but, you know, people who don't know where else to post their issue. So it might be that the issue should be open in another repo, but they go to the Express repo to do it. I'm looking down the list. So one other thing we might want to do is make a list of high impact repos just to start, so that people can, you know, look at that and
I
not
wonder
have
if
to.
even on your status board, somehow there, it could be like, hey, the last time we talked about it, these are the two,
Yeah,
you know, some
I think
subsets, since there's a bunch, but if it like it highlighted, you know,
mhm.
triage priority, these two.
Yeah, that would be great. I think that's a great, let me write that down. Just so I have a running list of things I want to improve on that, and I just haven't had time to actually do them.
Okay.
But it is open source, so if anybody else wants to do them, by all means, jump in.
So it sounds like today, though, like if Helio, for example, wanted to get involved and start to look at some issues, it would be in the Express repo itself would be the recommendation, is the place to look.
I think that would be the best place to start for people who, unless you have a specific interest in a certain niche, that is another repo, right? So if routing is your thing, go to the router repo. We have a bunch of things that need looking at. If low-level HTTP, you know, spec compliance is your thing, go to JS HTTP. But if you are unsure what you want, definitely start with the Express repo.
Jarish, any other thoughts or comments, like from your experience and what you've been doing this that you'd add to that?
Yeah, I guess that makes sense from my perspective. I guess we looked at the Express repo once briefly, myself and Harshita, and then we decided to take one round at least looking at the peripheral modules like the router and things like that, which the core Express make use of abundantly. So partly to do with being able to comprehend the whole middleware functionality a little bit more in depth, and partly to meet the aspiration of understanding things in more black and white. So I believe we two work together. We sit together in the office. So we believe we'll take a couple of more repos before we actually embarking on Express.
Okay, but it sounds, but if there's other people who are going to jump in, then the express one's the sort of recommended. Sounds good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then from there, there's two real good ways to find the right issues. The one would be just search for these tags that we mentioned in the triage document in the issues and PRs. So, just filter down to needs more info or awaiting more info, filter down to discussion, filter down to bug. And then we have to add the needs triage by default or something. I think there's a way to do it by default. We'll figure that out so that all new issues get a needs triage. We'll have to get that rolled out soon. But in the meantime, you can just watch for new, sort by the newest, and that can get people going. And then obviously then there's the status board again, which it's to look at the same kind of thing except across all the repos all at once.
Okay. Any other questions on that? No. So I guess we can move on. Discuss on how to coordinate engagements. Any thoughts on that? So, as I said, one of the discussion we had in the previous meeting is to have a public repo. But I believe that makes sense once the triage work is fully bootstrapped, meaning everybody are got into the corresponding repos and they started working and then they want to sync up. But before that, do you think some sort of an engagement model makes sense to sync up until we are fully bootstrapped into the work?
I think that the easiest thing to just get started with is issues in the discussions repo. Those are fairly low. Not a lot of people are watching the repo, so it'll be pretty limited in scope to the people who care to really follow the inner workings of the project. And then I think we could expand from there if we see that there's need. I don't know if everybody else likes that approach.
That makes sense to me. When we discussed last time, did you mean to propose opening a new repo only for the discussion among the triagers, or to reuse the discussion repo for the same purpose? I forgot actually.
Well, I think I didn't have a clear plan on that. I think it's all right if we make a new repo. I fear. Well, okay. Here's the thing. I want to make it clear that the goal is a path from I don't know anything about the project, but I want to help out, to being a member of the TC. And if everything is happening in one repo, there's a lot clearer path there because we're just part of one team trying to improve the project. So I think the discussions repo has been that in the past. So I don't see strong reason to change that. That said, I do think it would be helpful for us to have maybe issue types or again tags that help us filter to the different conversations we care about. So maybe having a triage tag in the discuss repo would solve that. Again, I don't know what's going to work best for everyone. I'm happy to just be flexible as we move forward and see. But I think that the discussions repo is sort of the clearest place to just start having these conversations.
Yeah. The pros and cons which I see is like this. The advantage is that you don't need another repo and everything in one single place. The disadvantage is from the triager's perspective, who wants to scope themselves in the roles of triagers, who are not interested in other part of the project. For example, I just want to limit my conversation only on the triaging topics. But if you start watching the discussion repo, I get everything. So a lot of them are noises as well.
Sounds like.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, it sounds like the discussion repo was pretty low volume, though, right? I don't.
It is. Also, I would like to add, we could just use the triage team, and so anything that is a triage related thing, we could just tag at triagers, because that's the whole way that we're structuring the actual functioning of this. Is when you submit yourself as a triager, you'll get added as a triage member of the team on all the different orgs. And so all we need to do is use the tag there in the conversations that apply. And then you don't have to follow the whole repo. You just get, tagged in those.
Even if I don't watch the repo, if the team mention is there, I will get a notification. Okay.
Yep.
So that makes sense.
So then for that, what we'll need to do is just make sure that we are vigilant about using that tag. So.
Yeah. Okay. That's a cool suggestion.
I don't want to end that unless everybody's in agreement, but we do only have 9 minutes left, and we should talk a little bit about the community corner.
Yep. That sounded good. I wonder if a little bit of text that describes that, as well as, like you mentioned, like you can ask to be, you can say, hey, I want to be some triage, and you'll be added, something that captures.
Oh, was that not in the, in the PR? I maybe overlooked that. Yeah, I think we need a new section in here before we merge this that talks about opening the PR to add yourself to the list, and then what we do when that happens. Gresh, I know you opened the PR for yourself, and we were going to link to that as the example, but could we maybe add that to a link and then a description of what to do to that, the documentation PR?
Basically, you want me to add one more line to say how to become a triager, and provide a link as a reference to the PR which I raised for reference.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. I can do that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Probably we should do that before the community corner.
Agreed. I think the goal would be that we can, at the community corner, we can actually walk through everybody opening their own PRs. That's my goal there.
Okay. Yep. Sure, I'll
like
do
you
that.
said, sorry, go ahead. We got 7 minutes, so I guess, Wes, yeah, if you wanted to move on to the next topic after that.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll try to be really quick in my synopsis of what I was hoping to do. So the idea was to just have a session where everybody sits down, really informal, sort of like this meeting. We'll go through a little bit very quickly about what the program is, why we're trying to do it, and the guidelines like Gresh laid out for in the PR, but also in this meeting, and then help people field their questions, but also help people open their PRs to join the triage team. And then the goal would be that we're live merging them and adding them to the groups. So there, as far as presentation goes, I don't think there's much to prepare. Mostly just just do exactly what we did here, and then have our computers open and ready to to help get people signed up. So anyway, that's what I was thinking for the thing. If anybody has any feedback or suggestions,
is that
or
after your talk or before your talk?
So I don't think they scheduled it. So that's
You're right.
part
Yeah, I
of
haven't seen the schedule yet. Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. It would be kind of nice if it was after my talk, but it's not dependent. So my talk is going to cover a bunch of other things. I was going to very quickly mention the triage thing, and then obviously, hopefully, if it was after my talk, then I could say, please come to the community corner. But I don't know what the schedule looks like. So
can I know how are you positioning the problem statement and the motivation from the project, as well as motivation for the members or the audience to get onto this work? I mean, what would be
Sure. So I haven't written down a clear script for what I was planning to say yet. Maybe I can, you're putting me on the spot just a little bit.
But definitely the motivation for the users is to be able to onboard onto the most used middleware in the Node.js ecosystem.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is the way I think about this, and the way I was thinking of phrasing it, is something like Express is one of the most highly impactful projects in the Node ecosystem. Any contribution you might do, be that helping other users or providing examples or actually committing code to the project, will affect millions of users. Something like that, to say like, hey, even the smallest little thing here is impactful. Again, I haven't written a script yet,
Yeah.
but I think it's very important for us to say that.
Yeah, I agree. That helps in two manners. One is to attract the audience, get the attention, and then continue the motivation beyond the listening in the community corner. We want them to come back and stay with the project. So
yeah, definitely. And then from the project side, I wanted to, and this is where a lot of this stuff will be covered in my talk. We are very impactful as a project, yet it is maintained effectively by one single person in most cases. And so I think from the project perspective, I want to make it clear that, Doug, myself, and then, the other members haven't been as involved in this process, but I think, they're all on board, is we really want to make sure that there is a healthy ecosystem of people willing to step up when they can help. And so fostering that means we need people to have a good on-ramp. So this is the first step of that on-ramp, is, just watching the issues, triaging the issues, understanding what the community's questions are and bugs that think are, and how that is. And again, like I said, this is actually part of my talk, is that's how I started, and then now I'm, actively working on maintaining the project. There is a story for people who want to have that kind of involvement and impact, to go from, this new program of triaging, to being, a key figure in the community. So that's sort of where I want to position the project side of it. Is like, we've got too few people maintaining too many modules that have too much importance. If you don't step up now, who knows what the future will hold. Not to be, doom and gloom, but a little bit of, we need your help now. Step up, kind of thing. Pep talk, hopefully.
So for my 2 cents worth, Wes, actually, I think we should start off, rather than doom and gloom, say it's a positive thing at the beginning, like package maintenance committee, this is why we exist. We're addressing, like things like, deprecation, ghosting, license, and just give them 2 or 3 minutes. And this is our first use case. And rather than say it's the right, I'll be careful of this, because rather than say it's the big one of the biggest things used in the Node ecosystems, I would actually say it's one of the biggest modules in the ecosystem, because our front-end devs are very delicate snowflakes. And because if you look at the OpenJS Foundation, all of those things, this is more like our type of thing, Express, but there's a whole bunch of people out there that we want to bring in, and it's like, it's the module system. So when it comes down to it, it's just some variant of JavaScript.
Yeah, also covered in my talk a little bit is one of the things that I don't think people understand is the Express project has this huge umbrella. And if you take any individual piece, you'll actually find that it is used in a whole bunch of different other ecosystems. So making those connections for people is, I think, really important, because they may be, a front-end dev, but if they use React Router, they're using path to regex. That's an Express module, right? So like there's these connections that people are missing. So that's actually like a key feature of the talk that I'll be giving, is how some of this stuff connects, and how, you know, even if this is not quite your, you know, you're not writing node servers, you might still be touching the Express ecosystem, and, you know, we would love to have you participate, you know, in whatever makes, you know, involves your work and your passions. So I think a lot of that will be covered there, and I don't want to rehash too much. Like I don't want to share. It depends on the scheduling, kind of. If the talk is first, then hopefully a lot of those people will be able to just, you know, have that baseline understanding of why they might want to be involved. I guess if the talk is second, then it might change the way I say. Might be more of a sales pitch for the talk, saying, "Hey, come to this talk so that you."
Right.
You know.
I've an open question to either How, because last time when I've seen nodes, you know, they basically talked in the coffee area. They stood up and said, "We're the node, we're the technical steering committee." And will there actually be a room? That's the thing, and we need to get that answered to know quite what the presentation or community corner would be.
My guess is it will be like last year, where it was kind of like out in the hall, but yeah, I don't know.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. And it might not be too easy to do PRs out in the hall. It might be, but we're going to need a whiteboard.
Yeah.
That's all.
How much time we get in the community corner? Any idea? 15 minutes or 30 minutes?
So I've asked, I just posted something in the chat with a link that Michael sent with this exact question. They're asking us, how long do we want? And I've posted a question saying, what is the format? If it's just like in the coffee area, it's going to be like 50. I mean, that's just from my previous observations. I don't know. So yeah, that needs to be answered before I think we can answer the question, what are we going to do?
Well, I think that the triager section of the community corner, I think, is perfectly suited for a coffee thing. I mean, there's not going to be much on that side. On the package maintenance working group, you know, that's sort of your what you think is yeah, separate, I guess, from this conversation.
But isn't it the same? Sorry, is it the same? So that's my is the triage, is it, I may have got confused. Is there a package maintenance and a triage community corner and they're separate? Because they seem to be pretty much interconnected.
I proposed this intentionally to be a little bit separate, because I don't want to stomp on the time for people who might not be interested in specifically this Express piece. But I agree. I think there is a lot of overlap and a lot of, you know, again, it's the Express is one of our pilot things for the package maintenance work group. So I'm not trying to say that they're separate. I just mean I have a very specific, I would like the triager part to be very specifically, here's exactly what the triage role is, what we hope to get out of it, and then have people open up their laptops and submit PRs to become triagers, which is a little bit different than, you know, let's just discuss all of these other things that we have in motion in the package maintenance working group, right? Yep. So I actually don't see a problem with them going on together at the same time and people moving back and forth between them. Because again, it might be like I'm, you know, myself and Gresh and whoever else wants to help are helping people open their PRs, and then those people go over and start talking about package maintenance things is, like, I think perfectly fine.
I think if you submitted a different topic, though, we'll end up with 2 topics in 2 places, which seems fine as well, right? Like
also, yeah.
So
it would be good to get the schedule so we know which one goes first, because it would be good for package.
Let me ask, there's somebody, they just opened up a speakers channel for the conference. Let me ask if they have a schedule for the community corner.
Yeah. Because references back and forth would be good, and the order will depend on that.
It'd be good if we went first so that we can say, and following us is the first use case for all those worried about the people getting lights and not being able to maintain their packages.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do have like 12:20 on the first day is my talk, where I'm talking about the work of the group. So depending on when we find out when those community corner ones on, I'll try and point to those 2 as well in that talk.
Yeah, awesome.
Like certainly I was going to mention, your talk, which is the next day, which is good. So I was going to say, hey, if you're, we mentioned Express as one of our, two proof of concept modules. And so it's like, and hey, and if you're interested, there's a talk by Wes tomorrow. So make sure you go see that.
Thank you.
Well, no.
Fill my auditorium.
We'll keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess we are on top of the hour.
Yep.
I guess we discussed pretty much everything. The meetings part, Wes is going to get back on whether this regular meeting can be merged with the TC meetings, and the engagement model we pretty much frozen on Express/discussion repo with a team mention. And then who's going to work on which repo, I guess we could still decide later based on people who are looking through the dashboard and figuring out what are the pain points, and keeping in mind that Express seems to be the most important repo at this point of time, but giving some leeway for the people to get comfortable with other repos as well. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think so.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you first.
The one thought I had on the meeting is it might be really good to have that set so that like in your talk and at the different sessions, you can say, and if you're interested, here's the next time you can come and meet, because people might put it into their calendar, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll open that issue like today or this weekend and make sure that we get a time nailed down. I don't think it should be too hard to schedule now that we've gone through this effort to see what time zones everybody's in for this one. So I'll make sure that happens before next week.
Sounds good.
Then I guess we covered everything.
Yeah.
Any other issues or any other topics anybody wants to bring in? If not, Michael, I guess we can shut down the recording.
Yeah, I'll just end the meeting and that'll drop the recording and say goodbye to everybody unless.
Well,
okay.
Thank you all. I'm really excited.
Everybody. Thanks. Yep. Great conversation.
Yeah. Yep. Have a good one.